I challenge you to a duel.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 53 of the Movie Duel podcast. My name is Peter and I am your host. On each episode of the Movie Duel podcast, we take a subject based around movies and then two of my co-hosts each pick a film that they think best fits that subject. The only rule being that you can't pick a film that has already been discussed on the podcast. This time around I am joined by movie duelist Jamie and a returning guest, the legend that is Mr. Kevin Lyons, to discuss their choices for the best horror comedy and some absolutely epic films in An American Werewolf in London and Evil Dead 2. But before we get into that, just a little reminder that you can find all of the links to our social media and contact details in the show notes to this episode, as well as the links to Kevin's work for the Encyclopedia of Fantastic Film and Television and his brand new podcast, Hammer Time. You can also find a link to our Patreon page, which you can find bonus content from as little as $1 a month. But the usual reminders that there is some strong language and there will be spoilers for both films that we're discussing as well. Without further ado, this is episode 53 of the Movie Duel podcast.
It's almost full moon. You change. You... That's enough! That's enough!
It's a Kev, welcome back, and I think since last time you were here, you've got a new project under your belt.
I have. I'm doing the Hammer Time podcast for Evolution of Horror, where we decided, you know, in a moment of insanity, that we'd do a weekly podcast on all of the the Hammer horror films, from Quatermass Experiments to The Devil a Daughter. And we're due to finish. We're recording this just before Christmas 2025. We're due to finish that podcast about this time next year. So we're in it for the long haul. It is quite an epic. So I'm amazed I've got a voice at all, to be honest.
So it's part of the Evolution of Horror network, and you.
It is, yeah.
You co-host that with Becky Dark.
With Becky Dark, that's right. Yeah, Becky's the kind of relative newcomer to Hammer. I'm the old hand who's been watching them for about 200 years, and we go into it as a sort of, you know. I'm Uncle Kev, imparting wisdom to the young folk. So, in fact, a friend of mine did actually suggest we should just rename the podcast "Uncle Kev Tells the Young People About Old Films." And I think that's probably about right. Hopefully, not as condescending as it sounds, but
fantastic. I mean, I must admit, Hammer is quite, despite being an absolute lover of horror movies, Hammer is a massive blind spot for me. So when I get round,
you've no excuse now. Come on,
I'm looking forward to getting sort of stuck in and listening to what you and Becky have to say about them. There's ones that I have seen, but as a full sort of almost genre, I suppose I've not really gone full force into Hammer horror. I've seen the odd one here and there, and the classics, and your Frankensteins and your Curse of Frankensteins and your Draculas.
Well, the only thing I can say to that, you get your bloody finger out, Marshall. Come on, where have you been?
Well, since we last recorded, I have finally watched 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Hey, and you live to tell the tale. You've invited me back on after I recommended 2001 to you. I've got family members who barely talk to me because I recommended 2001 to them.
But, yes. Well, I mean, I enjoyed 2001.
Good
Should
man.
we say that?
Good man.
Maybe not as much as you, but I very much enjoyed it.
I think very few people enjoy it quite as much as I do, to be honest. It's almost like a religion to me. So.
Fantastic. Okay. So we've got quite a big subject for Kevin's return to the podcast, and I put it to you and Jamie to make a selection for the best horror comedy. Now, we are, as everybody knows, we're massive horror fans here at the Movie Joe Podcast, and we know that Kevin's a massive fan of horror as well. But I mean, horror. What do you look for in a horror comedy? What do you think makes a good horror comedy, Kev?
I think so long as the people writing and directing it show a little bit of respect for the horror. And I think in the two films that we've got here tonight, they're made by fans of the genre. They're made by people who love horror, who understand how horror works, so they can bring the comedy in. It's a bit like, when you're younger, in my case, a long time ago, and you join a kind of a youth cult of some sort. I was a hippie for a while. I was a goth for a while. It was all right for us to say, oh, it's all a bit silly, isn't it? It's all a bit daft looking. Why have we got this ridiculous hair? But it's not all right for people from the outside to come and tell us that. We would fight them to the death over that. And it's the same with horror comedies. We can take the piss out of them because we understand them. And we have it's that Mickey taking comes from a genuine love of the genre. Far too many horror comedies, and I'm sure me, you, and Jamie, we can probably list hundreds of horror comedies that fail that test dismally. They're quite obviously made by people who perhaps saw Dracula 1931. They saw it once as a kid, and they think every vampire wants to drink your blood. And so they have someone in a Bela Lugosi costume doing the stupid accent, and they've never seen anything since. And I think the beauty of these two films that we're covering is that they are made by people who know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so when they're taking the mickey out of the genre, we're on side with them, because it's a little bit like, yeah, they're one of us. They understand the absurdity of the genre, but they're not having a go at us, and they're not having a go at the genre itself, but they're just saying it is a bit silly sometimes, isn't it? And we're all in for that. It's great.
It's a sort of a homage to that silliness.
It is, yeah, absolutely. So as long as they treat it with respect, I don't mind a horror comedy, but way too many of them are made by people who quite clearly haven't seen a horror film in decades, if at all, and just think, oh, they're all a bit daft, aren't they? So we'll just do this.
We're looking at you, lesbian vampire killers.
Oh my God, aren't we just? Yeah. Oh, one among many, one among too many.
That one really stands out, though. You can tell
It does, doesn't it?
nobody
Yeah.
had love for the genre in that film
No,
whatsoever.
absolutely right. No.
What about you, Jamie? Anything that you'd add to that? Anything else that you look for in a good horror comedy?
No, that's very much what I'd echo those words. I think it was a topic that was quite hard for me to choose one, because there's so many avenues I could go down, and if you say something like Shaun the Dead, which obviously we couldn't choose because it had come up previously. That's a really good example of something that it's done so lovingly by Edgar Wright, who clearly knew Romero, not just Romero, but there's a main Romero film, obviously, the Dawn of the Dead, that was being referenced. It was so lovingly and told, and there's so much sort of pastiche and sort of references, and it was clearly done by someone who knew the genre very well, and so I was definitely wanting to choose a director that had that background, and how much I love Raimi, so there was a good chance that I was going to choose a Sam Raimi film. I did predict that Kev would choose American Werewolf in London.
When Peter sent me the message saying, do you want to do it? And I said, well, the first and obvious answer is an American Werewolf in London. It was immediate, straight up. It was only afterwards I went away and I thought, oh, what about the old Dark House? Oh, what about Carry On Screaming? But we've done Carry On Screaming. We've done Shaun of the Dead, was done on here as well. So in the end, it has to be American Werewolf, yeah.
Okay, well, yes, there we are. So let's get into it. So, Kevin, please, if you can officially announce your choice for best horror comedy?
My choice is An American Werewolf in London from 1981.
La 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 la. Isn't this fun? Lovely stroll on the moors.
Did you hear that?
I heard that.
What is it?
You think it's a dog?
Nice doggy. Good boy.
What happened to them?
Well, the police report said they were attacked by an escaped lunatic.
A wolf. My friend Jack was just here. Told me that I will become a monster in 2 days.
Your dead friend, Jack.
Yes.
Gotta believe me, David.
Believe what? You're one of the undead, and I'm a werewolf.
Tomorrow night's the full moon. You're gonna change.
A what?
You'll become...
I know. A monster.
A naked American man stole my balloon.
What?
What did I do last night?
You don't remember?
The last remaining werewolf must be destroyed. It's you, David.
Run!
Good Lord.
So directed by John Landis, written by John Landis, starring David Norton as David Kessler, Jenny Agutter as Alex Price, Griffin Dunn as Jack Goodman, John Woodfine as Dr. Hirsch, and Frank Oz as Mr. Collins. I think that's the sort of main cast. I mean, you've got no end of people I'm sure we'll talk about at some point in this discussion. But Kev, could you please give us a synopsis for An American Werewolf in London?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's about, well, it starts with two American guys, two very affable American guys, actually. I really like them as characters, which is not often the case in a horror comedy. Quite often you just want to give them a bit of a slap. But these guys, you'd go to the Slaughtered Lamb with these two guys. They're on a tour of Europe, and they've decided that instead of going to the glory of Rome, they would in fact start in Yorkshire. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Yorkshire, but I tend to go to Yorkshire in the summer, which is not what they decide to do. They decide to go to Yorkshire in what looks like the worst winter on record, pretty dismal. In fact, it was shot in North Wales, but I mean, it's convincing enough. And they're doing this grand tour. They get a little bit lost, a little bit sort of, they need somewhere to shelter for the night. They find this pub, famously the Slaughtered Lamb, where we find the locals, Brian Glover, the brilliant Rick Mail, very young Rick Mail, David Schofield. You've got the landlady is Lila Kay. I mean, great. I mean, this film is cast to the hilt. Absolutely brilliant. They have got a big pentacle on the wall, pentacle, and they. It turns out that they've been keeping a secret. There's a werewolf among them. And the boys find out to their cost when they go out onto the moors. They've been warned not to, and they wander off. They get lost. They get attacked. Jack is killed, but it's not the end of him. He keeps turning up as a kind of horribly deteriorating zombie / ghost throughout, looking worse for wear every time we see him. And David survives, but of course he now has the curse of the werewolf, and he's going to transform into the wolf at the full moon in one of the most amazing sequences you'll ever see. It's not all bad news. He meets this nurse who looks amazingly like Jenny Agutter, which is, so it's not all bad news for him, but it's not good. He undergoes these.
I think we'd all take becoming a werewolf, wouldn't we? Surely.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember watching this on video when I'd seen it in the cinema. We watched it on video when it came out. I watched it with my family because I showed my mum the transformation scene, and she said, "Oh, we're going to watch that tonight." And of course, in the year or so that it had taken 2 years, whatever, to get onto onto video, I'd completely forgotten the sex scene. And so there's me and my brother, who's like 18 months younger than me, trying not to make eye contact with each other. We're not desperately trying not to look at our parents. I'm thinking, that's Jenny Agutter, isn't it? I was 19 when I first saw this film. Jenny Agutter was, was the epitome of everything a 19-year-old boy wanted. But anyway, he becomes a werewolf, he kills loads of people, and there is, as you would expect, a tragic ending. It's not a spoiler because it's a werewolf film. No werewolf film has ever ended happily. So it has a tragic ending.
Yeah. Excellent. So, I mean, you talked a little bit there about your sort of first experience with this film. So you saw it at the cinema?
I did. There'd been a lot of hype about it in Starburst and Fangoria. There weren't many magazines around at the time. It came out just before the big boom in British fanzines that happened a year or two later. But there was enough in Starburst and particularly Fangoria to make me think this might be a bit special. This might be good. And they talked about this transformation scene, and I thought, okay, let's give it a go. Let's see what they can do. And honestly, I remember sitting in this cinema on the Isle of Wight. I was on my own in the middle of the afternoon. No one was there. I always went in the middle of the afternoon on matinee days. It was just me. They got to the point where the projectionist would lean out of the box and actually say to me, what trailers do you want to see? Here's what we've got. And he'd ask me which trailer, because there was no one else there. But I remember seeing it.
That's dangerous with a Jenny Agutter sex scene in it as well.
Could you just loop that bit a couple more times if you wouldn't mind? But no, I saw it and I was just blown away. But I couldn't believe what I was seeing because I'd probably seen the Wolfman at this point. The old Universal one. May even have seen the Hammer one. I was certainly aware of how werewolves changed on screen with that lap dissolve, and every time that dissolves a bit more, there's a bit more hair on him. Never seen anything quite like this, and I was just blown away by it. I just thought it was just the most amazing thing I'd ever witnessed. The fact that it was also incredibly funny was just an added bonus, I think. And there's a perfect example of what I was saying earlier. When you get to that transformation scene, played totally straight. There's one gag where he said, "I'm sorry I called you a meatloaf," when he's talking about his friend. But the rest of it, absolutely agonizing to watch. You really feel the sound of bones crunching in a comedy film. That's how you do it, boys. If you're out there wanting to make a comedy horror film, go watch that sequence, learn how to isolate, or indeed, look at Evil Dead 2, because they do that a lot in that as well. Look at the way they isolate the horror from the comedy. You do get crossover bits, but the horror is the horror, the comedy is the comedy, and they dovetail beautifully. And that scene in particular is incredible. You end up laughing at the end of it because you can't quite believe what you've seen, because you're so I don't know what to do. I'm going to laugh at it because I don't know what to do. I don't know what the appropriate response is to this. So
So Jamie, what about you? What was your first experience with this film?
I remember seeing it on VHS quite early on. It probably would have been mid 80s. I think I probably watched it. It was I definitely watched Evil Dead and American Werewolf quite close together. I had heard about the transformation scene. It's obviously legendary, and I remember reading about it. And it's just what you expect it to cut away, don't you? But it doesn't. And it's there in front of you, just happening. And Rick Baker's work on that is just absolutely astounding.
And it's happening under bright lights as well. They don't turn the lights out. They don't have it sort of, in the shadows. It's happening in really harsh light. So you're sitting there thinking, how the hell are they doing that? Because it's like, they haven't hidden anything from us. His face, there's that scene, isn't there? That wonderful shot of the snout growing. And I just no, I'm giving up trying to work out how they did that. I now know, of course, because, I'm older and, more widely read on the subject. But at that time, when I was 19, seeing that, I was thinking, how are they doing this in bright light and still fooling me?
Yeah, not hiding anything. I mean, that sort of ties in really with my experience with this film. Because for years and years and years, it was sat on that shelf in the video shop. That famous image was, the front cover of the video and the DVDs for a long, long time. I think it probably still is, of that, the snout bit of the transformation and it just stuck with me. And it always fascinated me, even as a kid, just sort of seeing that and thinking, what is behind this, what's the rest of this film? And I was quite like, I think I was probably 16, 17, I think, when I first saw it. And it just blew me away. I mean, whatever I expected, it wasn't. You know, it's such a different film. You know, a different film to you know, outside of the transformation scene. Really, it's got these aspects of sort of very classic. And this time, it sort of struck me actually, just thinking about that. There's elements of it that feel quite Hammer-esque as well. And you know, especially the sort of storytelling and obviously the English setting is sort of key as well. But you know, it's such it's almost a very straightforward werewolf story. You know, it's got all the main tropes, it's got all the main beats and everything else. It almost feels a bit like, you know, a very sort of minor precursor to Scream in many ways, I think, because the boys know the legend of the werewolf and the film. You know, they talk about films, Lon Chaney and everything else.
Well, this is something that happens in The Howling as well, isn't it? Up until that point, you'd get these films that go, vampires? What are vampires then? And it's like, we'd have this sort of useless explanation from people who'd never seen a horror film before. Whereas these guys, they know. There's a lovely little exchange between David and Alex, the nurse, the Jenny Agutter character, where he says, you know, I think I might be a werewolf. And she said, what, like Oliver Reed? And he says, no, Bela Lugosi attacks Lon Chaney Jr. And it's like, oh, it's heaven, isn't it? It's just absolute heaven that these are characters who know what werewolves are. And they know that the audience knows what werewolves are. So they're not going to bother with that ridiculous, like, this is what a werewolf is. It's a man who transforms under the full moon. We all know that. So just get on with the story. Yeah, it's terrific.
I mean, obviously, at the helm of this film is John Landis, who I believe, you know, before this film, he was known. He was a comedic director, and I think after this film, he was still very much a comedic director. I mean, do you think there was much sort of trepidation around him directing a horror film at the time?
It took him a long time to get it made, didn't he? He wrote it in 1969 when he was working on Kelly's Heroes, I think. He was some very lowly sort of like third assistant director or production assistant or something. And he'd heard sort of stories about werewolves and thought, that's a great idea for a film. And it took him 10 years to get it off the ground.
Didn't he come across, wasn't it some kind of a gypsy funeral?
That's right. Yeah. And he sort of spoke to them and they were saying that the guy that they were burying or whatever was a werewolf because there was still a very prevalent belief in werewolves at that time in that area. And so he built the story out of that. And I think this is probably his most serious film, even though it's hysterically funny. It's the film that has got the most serious stuff in it. Every one of his other films, even his other comedy horror films, they're much more comedy.
Yeah.
This one's more horror with a bit of comedy in it. If that makes sense.
I think it sort of comes from the comedy isn't at the expense of the horror.
That's right.
It's very much, it's very believable as well. The comedy. It's not, you know, it's not just being, you know, trying to get the laughs, but it's like, you know, the banter between the boys or the fact that they are in the middle of nowhere in effectively a strange country and they're out of their depth almost. Or it might be, you know, a bickering couple or just, you know, a sort of a bit of a, you know, a simple sort of lovey-dovey couple or something and their interactions with each other, or a sort of stiff British businessman and things like, you know, all that comedy feels very natural.
Well, I think there's a lot of satire about the British way of life, which could only be done by an American looking in from the outside. There's a terrific scene where this will mean nothing to younger viewers because they don't remember the horrors of only having 3 television channels. But there's just the bit where he's in the flat on his own, David. He's bored, so he puts the television on, and all he can find is a test card, a darts competition, Or it's Nina Carter, isn't it? The Page 3 girl doing it.
News of the World.
Yeah, naughty Nina doing an advert for the News of the World. And that sort of, in a way, that kind of almost summed up British television in 1980, 81. I can remember being unemployed around that time, and there was no afternoon television. Could you believe that? That's why I went and got a video recorder, because I was bored to tears in the afternoons. I didn't like going out much. I liked staying indoors. But yeah, that little sort of bits of satire like that about the British way of life, it's very subtle, might even be lost on younger viewers, because they might look at that particular scene and think, well, I don't get what the joke is. But the joke is that there were only 3 TV channels, and in the afternoons they were bloody awful, frankly. It was terrible. So yeah, it was. I like the subtlety of some of the humour. Some of it's a bit broad, but sort of some of it's really quite sort of it creeps up on you. Some of the humour.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's almost, I wouldn't. There's no sort of farcical moment in it or anything like that, but there's some silly humour in there as well, which I really appreciate in it, because I think it's just done so well, and I think I know you say the sort of satirical edge of it of an American, satirizing life in England, but I think Landis seems to have a good grasp of British humour as well.
Yeah.
And I think that really sort of balances really well. I mean, you got something as simple as, I can't remember his name. Is it Sergeant? Is it McManus?
Oh yeah.
Sort of bumbling sidekick,
yeah.
And with a point where he sort of tries to make out, oh, don't worry, we'll get this man, and then promptly nearly walks.
He's basically trying to charm Jenny Agutter, isn't he? He's trying to be all suave, as we all would in front of Jenny Agutter, and then walks into a door pretty much. And I think brilliant example of that is how he absolutely nails the British sex comedy of the 1970s. With that scene with See You Next Wednesday, the film, which of course is his trademark, taken from 2001, my favourite film. And this is a kind of a little sort of totemic thing for Landis. It turns up in all of his films, and in this particular film, it's a British sex comedy, and that is the most farcical part of the film. Where the guy bursts in and sort of like, you said you'd never do this again. And the guy who's in bed with his girlfriend said, I never said. They said, no, not you. And then she said, I don't know who you are. And
sorry.
Completely farcical, but that's what those films were like. They were farcical. Yeah. So he nails that perfectly. And it is the only moment where we descend into complete silliness. And it's absolutely right that it does so.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's it. It makes sense. Yeah. It feels natural, and it feels, it feels of that sort of moment, despite what we're going to be faced with in a matter of sort of seconds.
Indeed,
Within that, and we touched on a lot of the cast there, and I think there's some really great performances in this. I mean, let's touch on Griffin Dunne a little bit here, because he does have a lot of work to do in this.
He does,
in this film. Well, not a lot, but in the scenes that he is in, he's got a lot to do. And again, watching this for the first time, you don't often, or certainly not the werewolf films I've seen, you don't get this sort of secondary sort of storyline about the victims and the undead and the ghosts or whatever they are. But it's just so he steals every scene he's in. I think Griffin does.
He does, and he's rewarded with some terrific dialogue. The classic of, you ever spoken to a corpse? It's boring. And what's lovely about it is Jack hasn't changed at all. Griffin Dunne just plays him as the same Jack as we met in the first scene when he was still alive. The fact that he's mouldering and falling apart and eventually becomes, what looks like an animatronic puppet because there's so much makeup all over him, it's still Jack. He still plays him as that lovable, slightly goofy idiot that we met in the first scene. And that's what I love about that performance, that he doesn't try to come on all scary, because he's not. He's just David's mate who's a bit pissed off that he's dead now, and it's like, it's a really strong performance. I think he's a very underrated actor, Griffin Dunne.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I listened to the audio commentary with David Norton and Griffin Dunne, and I had some severe validation in his commentary, because he says the first scene that we see him after he's died, when he visits David in the hospital, he said he felt he was acting his socks off. He said, and all that people could look at was the flappy little bit of skin on his neck. And that, I remember the first few times I watched that film, all I could see was that flappy little bit of skin on his neck. So obviously wasn't the only one, because many people have mentioned that.
No, it is true. It is quite distracting, but then that's part of the joy of it. That's part of the sort of the technical brilliance of the film. That, you are distracted by these. How have they done that? And he is given the performance of a lifetime there.
Well, that's it. Obviously, quite rightly, that transformation scene is what sort of Rick Baker is probably most remembered for. But then when you look at, especially that fresh dead Jack look, it is incredible, absolutely incredible.
It's amazing. And the other victims later on, where we see them in various states of decay and mutilation and everything, and it is. Any other film, they would have been the highlights. They would have been the ones that were on the front cover of Fangoria. Yeah. Because, they're so terrific. But he upped the ante somewhat with that one sequence. And in some ways, I don't think the Werewolf film ever really recovered from that. I think it's better than the Howling's version. The Howling was doing something very similar, but I think this is better because, like I say, it's totally in the light the whole time. And I don't think the Werewolf film has ever really got any better than that one sequence. The pain of that transformation is what gets me. I watched it this afternoon in preparation for this, and that scene really hurts. It really hurts. You can feel. I mean, we were saying
aside from smelling it, you feel every inch of that scene.
We're praising Griffin Dunn as we should, but let's give David Norton a shout for that one sequence alone. That. When he just starts with him just sort of screaming "Jesus Christ" and clutching his head, and then all hell breaks loose. And he's
it's so brilliant in that we get this that sort of build up, don't we? That he's bored in the flat, and Bad Moon Rising playing, and he's just doing this, that, and the other.
I can't listen to Bad Moon Rising anymore without waiting, without being on edge, thinking someone's going to change, aren't they? Something's going to happen.
But then we cut away to. The most adorable little boy at the hospital who just says no to everyone. No. And then we cut back, but it's straight into it.
Right.
It's not. There's no build up to it. It's Jesus Christ.
There's a very similar scene in a film called Legend of Hell House, where Roddy McDowall is that character. He's sitting reading a book, and in that film, much as I love it, I think they hold that shot a beat too long, because we're then thinking, something's going to happen. When it cuts back in American Werewolf, we're still not sure anything's going to happen, because he's been so boring, in inverted commas, because that's what it's portraying, the boringness of a wet autumnal afternoon in London. And suddenly this happens. The timing is horror and comedy. There you go. Horror and comedy, they both rely on timing. Get the timing right and you've won. You've got it. And the timing of that scene is exemplary. It really is extraordinary.
Well, I mean, Jamie, let's come to you here, because I know you're a big fan of Mr. Bottin, who the sort of flip side of in the Howling.
Where he did Howling,
yeah. I mean, do you think that transformation matches up to this one?
Oh no, you can't compare them. But I will say that Bottin was, he was very young when he did the Howling. And Rick Baker was much more established for American Werewolf, and Bottin then went on to do The Thing, and that was his Rick Baker moment. So
and I think The Howling was made slightly before American Werewolf, so I think Bottin sort of did it first. Well, Dick Smith did it first in The Exorcist, didn't he, with that throat enlarging bit, which is the same technique. So Bottin does have the honour of having got there first. I just think Baker kind of refined it for this film.
Yeah,
I think it's like you say, isn't it? That's done in full light. The Howling's very much sort of in the, or kind of in the shadows. Where this is, you see in every inch of this man change. You're not just seeing his face elongate or anything like that. You're seeing him in various different stages whilst it's happening.
The hand.
The hand, yeah,
the foot, the heel always
of the foot.
gets
Yeah, I
me.
know, that's horrible, isn't it? There's just something really nasty about that heel
But
suddenly enlarging.
Do you think it sort of matches up though, Kev? Once we get to the full-on werewolf, do you think that sort of matches up to the actual transformation?
The one shot I wish we didn't have was of the werewolf in the tube station, because he does just look like a guy on all fours in a fur coat. Whereas, before it was, and it doesn't really look like the werewolf we'd seen in the flat. And in some ways, I think, show us that transformation and then just don't show us much more, because we already know what it looks like. And that would have kept us on tenterhooks, not knowing whether we're going to see that again. And so, I don't think that sort of full length, we only see a tiny bit of it at the top of the screen, but it's enough to sort of like, oh, that doesn't look like the werewolf we just saw. And it throws me off a little bit, but that's the only misstep, I think, certainly in terms of the effects.
And I mean, it's a very, it's also a very ferocious werewolf. It doesn't hold back on the kills either.
No,
we go straight from this transformation, not to just, one sort of moment of insanity and tearing somebody apart. He goes through a good chunk of London.
And we don't actually see the attacks as such. We see the aftermath of it, and that's almost worse. When we see those victims all lined up in that porn cinema in Piccadilly, and all sitting there with open wounds and all the rest of it, we think, my God, what did it do to those people? Look at that, it's horrible. And so, again, sort of leave a little bit to the imagination. It's an odd thing to say in a film where they sort of throw the transformation scene right in our face, but it also leaves a little bit of room for us to fill in the gaps and make things even worse. Which is always the best way.
And do you think that Winston survived?
Who?
The dog.
Oh, the dog. Oh, well,
That's not Winston.
I have to hope so. I couldn't go through life thinking Winston didn't survive.
Well, he wasn't in the cinema, was he?
He wasn't in the cinema, so he's out there running loose somewhere. So having survived, he's got a great story to tell all the other dogs in Battersea's dog's home, hasn't he? When he finally gets caught and locked up. So no, he survives. He survives. And the cat that was on the window ledge. Nothing happens to the cat. Don't tell me any different. I don't mind werewolves and humans being killed, but not cute pets. No.
And I mean, maybe just because to sort of skip back a little bit here to the sort of Yorkshire setting and the slaughtered lamb, because I think, again, from things like Hammer horror films, or even many classic horror films, we have this. You more often than not have this sort of setting where maybe people are a bit out of the depth, or in a strange country, or somewhere where it's a bit spooky or whatever. And what I think is great about this is that, even us being English and being from England and being familiar with those kind of settings, they still manage to make that feel spooky, and that make you feel like an outsider, like the boys are.
Well, I lived in the countryside. As I said, I was on the Isle of Wight when I saw this. And honestly, in some of the smaller pubs, in some of the smaller, I'm going to say towns, but they're basically a collection of about 5 houses and a pub, you could go into them and those conversations would stop. Yes. And people would stare at you like, who are these people? They're not locals, are they? What are they doing here? And so that was very real. That's a very British thing, that we don't do outsiders, even when they're actually sort of, even when they look like us, we don't do outsiders in this country. We don't like that at all. And so there's that sort of. But also as well, there's that running thing with pubs in British horror and science fiction films. Shaun of the Dead, of course, the first thing they do when there's a zombie apocalypse, let's head to the pub. You can go back to The Earth Dies Screaming. You can look at The Day the Earth Caught Fire, where they repair to a bar just off Fleet Street for great chunks of the film. It's a place of safety in most British horror films. In this case, it's not. It's the primary site of all the problems that they're going to encounter later on. If they hadn't stopped at the slaughtered lamb, they might have got away with it. But it's the fact they stop at the slaughtered lamb and they're asking embarrassing questions, and then the werewolf is already on the loose, but maybe he would have ignored them if they just kept going. So in this case, the pub is the source of all the horror in a lot of ways. But so that's quite clever the way he inverts this great British horror tradition of let's all go to the pub until it all blows over, that kind of thing. But
And a very British hospital as well.
Oh God, yes,
incredibly British.
There's a lot of characters in this film who get one line, or in the case of that little boy, one word, who are absolutely terrific, and you never forget them. And there's the Indian porter.
Oh, I love
him. So wonderful. He gets that
Brilliant.
one line of dialogue when Alex asked him about David, and he said, "I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a porter. I just push things." And he's sort of the demarcation of jobs. It's never been better displayed than in that one moment. That one line of dialogue, and it is absolutely a beautifully crafted scene, that one. I just push things. It's wonderful.
Yes, yeah. And obviously the incredible John Woodvine as well, who we lost quite recently.
We did, yeah.
He's one of my favourite characters in this film. And it's one of my quotes at work. If somebody wants me and I'm busy, no end of times I've said, just tell them I've died in an old war wound.
Just tell them I'm dead.
It's brilliant. But I mean, he's our sort of, again, going back to the Hammer comparisons, I suppose he's the sort of Peter Cushing type character. He's the Van Helsing kind of character.
Right,
he's looking for the answers, and he's and we get in a lot of films like this, I think he would be quite a throwaway character, but he's quite integral to the plot. He's doing the investigation. He goes back to Yorkshire to find out what's really happening. He's taken a keen interest in David Kessler, and like most characters in this film, he gets those sort of comedy moments as well, which is
lovely scenes at the beginning with the nurses. When the nurses are saying, like one of them had a look at David under the thing, I think he's Jewish, and he comes in and says, well, it's very much, Alex said it's a very popular operation in America. He just appears out of nowhere and says, Nurse Price is right. And haven't you got something to do in this hospital? Sends a nurse packing. And he feels like an actual doctor. He feels like, I'm in charge, but I'm not going to patronize them that much. But I'm in charge, and I'm going to rein them back in a bit because they're being a bit naughty. But I'm not going to report them because I'm not that kind of guy. But he's a very likable character. I find a lot of those authority figures can be quite unpleasant. But I think if I'd suffered from a bad case of lycanthropy, I'd quite like Dr. Hirsch on my side, to be perfectly honest, because he does seem to know what he's doing, and I love the way he believes. Any other film, he would have been the character that was going, werewolves? That's nonsense. There's no such thing as a werewolf. He's like, okay, I've listened to them. I think David's a werewolf. And he buys into it. And I like that because it's quite economic. We don't have to go through that whole sort of rigmarole of, I don't believe.
Well, I think he sort of says, doesn't he, that he even if he's not, turning into a wolf,
he believes he is.
He believes he's
That's
a
right.
werewolf.
Yeah. So he's kind of maintaining slight distance, but he's willing to believe that something is going on, and I love him for that. He's terrific. And John Woodvine, what an actor! Absolutely brilliant.
And I mean, also, I don't think, for the most part, especially the werewolf side of the story, I don't think it's a particularly scary. I think it's very unnerving in places.
There's one terrifying.
This is what I was going to get to. Outside of the sort of werewolf lore and everything else, there is an absolutely terrifying scene.
There are two, and I think I know which one you're going to go with, but I'll chip in for another one.
So, well, I mean, obviously David sort of has these sort of dream sequences, specifically when he's in the hospital. And the first one, I suppose, whether that's the one that you were going to mention,
the bed in the forest. And for a split second, we see David looking like something out of The Exorcist. We get a sudden close-up on his face as his eyes open and he snarls and he's got this horrible green skin and sort of like like fangs.
It's almost Mr. Barlow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's kind of horrible, and it's such a jump. It's such a shock when you see that. Like, oh my God, they are going to try and scare us. And then, of course, the famous one is the next dream sequence, which is the brilliant double bluff. Which like, oh, it's all over. Oh no, it's not. It's really...
Yeah, and I mean, I think the randomness and the ferocity of that scene.
Because you're already laughing at the fact that there are Nazi werewolves with machine guns. That already is another moment of absurdity where you're thinking, oh, this is definitely a dream because this is so ridiculous. This is silly. And then he wakes up and you go, ha, I knew that was a dream. Oh, here you go. And then suddenly Alex comes in and gets stabbed and she's lying on the floor, gore everywhere. He's like, holy shit. And he says something like that, doesn't he? He said, holy shit. I think when he wakes up. And he's like, the audience is saying the exact same thing. To me, it's very similar to a scene in a film that Jamie mentioned earlier, The Thing, where we get that lovely, where the audience steps into the film, where the head grows the legs and walks out, and that guy looks at it and says, you've got to be fucking kidding. Because the entire audience is saying the same thing as that character. And I think in American Werewolf, we're all saying, oh shit, when he wakes up, because it's such a shock, it's such a jolt.
Yeah. Well, I think even in that, within that scene, nobody's safe in that scene because his younger brother and sister are in that scene as well, which I don't think, do we see them get killed?
We see mum and dad get killed. We see mum literally blown away. We see her be thrown across the room, which is really quite something. All accompanied by the Muppets. One of the most innocent things of the 70s, and this mayhem is going on. We don't see what happens to the brother and sister because they're holding on to David's head with a knife to his throat. They're clearly making him watch what they're doing to the brother and sister. But, they weren't going to go quite that far in a relatively mainstream film to actually show children being murdered in 1981. That was, nowadays maybe they would, but I don't think back then they were, we were quite ready for that.
But I think you feel in that scene that you might as well have seen.
Oh, yeah, you're so traumatized
it's just so in your face.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it almost comes as a relief when he phones them later on and the sister is still alive. It's like, oh, thank God, it's been confirmed they are okay.
Yeah, and I mean, as we sort of lead into that finale and get into the porn cinema, we get again, just you got all this sort of horror set pieces and the transformation and everything else, and then we sort of finish with this sort of flurry of epic stunt work.
Yeah,
in the middle of Piccadilly Circus.
You get very briefly to see the legendary Vic Armstrong, one of the great stunt supervisors. He's driving the bus that crashes. And, just for a second, like anybody who knows Vic Armstrong is, they see that, oh, he's Vic Armstrong. And, we get to see John Landis being run over by a car. He gets hit by a car and thrown through. And it's just mayhem, just absolute chaos. And it's the Blues Brothers bit, really, isn't it? It's this is where he's doing his Blues Brothers bit. Well, I'm just going to go completely over the top here and just have one werewolf loose in Piccadilly Circus and look what it does. And you can't honestly tell me that wouldn't have happened. No. That probably would have happened like that. It would have caused that kind of mayhem. But then it all beautifully just stops when we get that tragic, heartbreaking ending where right at the last knockings, you see the wolf in the alleyway. If you haven't seen it, by the way, you shouldn't be here. Go and watch it. Don't listen to us. Go and watch it now, okay? But it's going to end tragically. But they're in this alleyway, and Alex approaches the werewolf very bravely, trying to convince David to come back and all the rest of it. And David seems to remember something he'd said earlier about in the mythology, a werewolf can only be killed by the one that loves them. And as soon as she says, I love you, David, he pounces. And that's when the police gun him down, because he knows then I can be killed now because she's provoked me into attacking. So it's the one who loved me. And it's heartbreaking. It's tragic. And I love the fact that it just cuts on Jenny Agutter crying. And we're just left stranded. We have no idea what happens to her afterwards. But I kind of like that because...
But straight into the most bombastic version of Blue Moon. The third time we've heard that song.
Yeah, and this one is
the most ridiculous.
Over the top doo-wop version. It's just madness. But it's a brilliant finale all round. Right from the moment he sets foot in that dingy porn cinema. And
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you that I never actually witnessed firsthand those porn cinemas, but I do know that they existed in 1980. They were still around. Honest Gov, I never went into one. I'm too bloody scared, to be honest. I never quite knew what you were going to find in there, if you're going to get out alive. But they were everywhere. And so he goes into this cinema, he transforms, there's all these dead people around. There's that brilliant scene where that cop just turns up and just shines the lights and just goes, oh my God. It's like, and we don't see what he's seeing, but it's enough for us to know. And there's again, it's a little bit like the scene in The Thing where the guy says, what is it? He said, I don't know, but it's pissed off. They sort of bang it away. And the usherette says, what's going on? She says, I don't know, it's an animal. Nobody knows what's happening. It's really wonderful. Go into the mayhem, go into that beautiful downbeat ending. What a way to end the film.
It reminds me of Cronenberg's The Fly.
Yes.
You got similar sort of set. It's this sort of amazing sort of final sequence of mayhem, and then you get the tragic ending and the quick
the sudden cut.
Sudden cut.
I mean, nowadays you'd have like a 10-minute epilogue showing what happened to her and all the trauma that she'd suffered and setting up for a sequel and all the rest of it. Back then, we had no niceties about our audiences. It's like, she's suffering, bang, bye, go on, off you go. Second showing's happening now. Go away and think about it, But that's what I liked about films back then. They put us through the ringer. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just a final sort of shout out to Rick Baker and Jack's final appearance in that cinema. Because it is just, I mean, I always assumed it was an animatronic, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Now.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if it is or not. Yeah.
It just, I mean, it doesn't look right. I mean, it looks true to form in that he's degraded that much that, his skeleton's now sort of showing. But you don't doubt it for a second that is Jack. Again, down to the, the voice performance of Griffin Dunn and obviously the special effects work by Rick Baker. You do not doubt it. You're not sat there going, well, that's...
He's still the Jack that we saw out on the moors. He's still David's best friend. Yeah. He's still trying to defend David. When they're talking about, sort of the ways they could commit suicide, it's like, Jack is so desperate to defend David, even to the end. No, that's too painful. Don't make him do that. He's like, he's a really good friend, and he never changes. No matter what his outward appearance is, he's still Jack, and you've got to love him for that. No matter how mouldy and smelly he might be at this point, he's still Jack. You've got to love him.
Excellent. And we get in the start of that finale as well. We get everybody's favourite sort of standard Cockney, Alan Ford.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
as the taxi driver.
Yeah, exactly.
Like token Londoner.
Takes me back Alan to the days of the Whitechapel murders, and something like that, isn't it? And in the porn cinema in the film, we get another legend. We get Lindsay Drew, who was quite a famous porn actress, one of our few porn actresses. She married Ben Dover, notorious porn director, and is the mother of the older boy in Outnumbered, Tiger Drew.
Oh yeah.
Drew
Honey. That's it. Yeah, because Ben Dover's surname is Honey, so Drew Honey. But yeah, that's his mum that you're playing Brenda Bristol's.
Another little bit of trivia: the businessman who gets attacked in the underground. We know is
Bib Fortuna.
Wow, there you go. This film was the making of careers, wasn't it? It was the making of careers.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
Well, there we go. That's American Werewolf in London.
A deserved winner. Let's stop here. Let's not go on anymore. A deserved winner. That's quite enough of that nonsense.
Excellent. Okay, we'll take a short break now, and we'll be back in a moment with Jamie's choice. Okay, so welcome to the intermissions. This is a part of the episode in which I ask my guests a random question, a question that they haven't prepared for, and get their honest first answer. So, gentlemen, are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Go on then.
Okay, so fairly straightforward on this one. So horror comedies. So in terms of maybe sort of classic horrors, or maybe horrors that haven't sort of ventured into the comedy circles, what classic horror do you think could be made into a horror comedy? And who would you get to make it?
Yeah,
that's a good one. The problem is, of course, there are so many classic horror films which are funny anyway, even though they didn't mean to be. So they're kind of comedies already. But that's a really tough question.
It is.
I'm tempted to say something really facetious like The Exorcist as a comedy, but that's cheating, isn't it? That's just being silly.
Well, it's been done. Well, I suppose it's been spoofed.
It's been spoofed. Yeah, and that's the other problem, of course. There are an awful lot of spoofs. We had a whole string of them a few years ago where they were taking films which were already spoofs, like Scream, and they're spoofing them. And it's like, did you not watch the film? Did you not pay attention? What would I do? What would I choose?
I mean, would you say something like The Wicker Man? But then I suppose that's already been done.
Yeah, that's been done. Yeah.
And it's already a musical, let's face it. So, Night of the Living Dead, I think. But again, that's been done because Return of the Living Dead is kind of, a comedy version of that.
Maybe this is a bit of an unfair question. Then,
it is. It's I want to say things like Rosemary's Baby, but would that make a good comedy? Because it's just too raw, isn't it? It's just
too dark.
Too dark. See, Frankenstein's been done brilliantly.
Young Frankenstein.
Which would have been my second choice, incidentally, if I'd not gone with American Werewolf. Wow, that's an almost impossible question to answer, isn't it? It's, as for who would be in it, if it was British, it would be Sid James, no matter what it was, just because Sid James was just a bit like, there's a thing amongst film fans, isn't there, that any film could be improved by putting John McClane from Die Hard in it. Any film could be improved by putting Sid James in it, frankly. But,
Well, I mean, I suppose, interestingly, the only sort of carry-on horror, Sid James wasn't
He wasn't in, exactly. No, Screaming, he wasn't. Although he did do... Is it What a Whopper? About the Loch Ness Monster, which is, to be fair, not very good, though Sid is, obviously. But I'm waffling here to give me and Jamie some thinking time. I can see the,
Thank you, Kev.
I can see the cogs behind Jamie's eyes whirring. He's desperately trying to think of something, and like me, I don't think.
Well, no, I suppose you're right. Really, I mean, it has. I suppose they've all been done.
They've all been done. Yeah.
I mean, Psycho, maybe. Psycho, could you? Well, I mean,
but that's been how many times? I mean, like in High Anxiety, the Mel Brooks films, where we see the spoof of the shower scene. It's also in Rocky Horror Picture Show, I think. They spoof the shower scene, so the shower scene has been spoofed more than any other.
Yeah.
So
Body double.
Yeah. So it's all been. There's not that much that hasn't been.
I mean, I suppose maybe The Thing. You could definitely add a bit more comedy into The Thing.
You could. There's not a lot of laughs in it.
Would you want to though? It's a film about paranoia and.
You wouldn't want to, but let's face it.
Would it fit? Would it fit?
Just the fact that we're talking about it is giving some idiot an idea, isn't it? Somebody in Hollywood right now is thinking, "Hey, those limeys have got an idea. Let's do a comedy musical of The Thing." It's like, no, guys, please don't. All right, just don't. But no, what would you? I don't know. I'm at a loss to know what to do. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but that's a very funny film in its own right. Anyway, it's got a lot of.
Well, I would say the sequel sort of makes it even more sort of
yeah. So you'd have to go with something really, really, really obscure, some rubbish sort of Z-grade film, which you just hope that no one's ever heard of, so you could rip it apart.
Well,
some of the Japanese horror, maybe.
Yeah, but then.
But again, things like Ring has been spoofed in so many films as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, there we go. We'll leave it as an unanswerable.
Yeah, sorry, we
intermission question there, for the first
sorry,
time. No, I didn't think it through.
What was your one?
I didn't really have one.
No, all right.
I see. We're supposed to come up with the goods, and you haven't even thought of one. Yeah. What a disgrace.
Yeah. There we go. Or maybe a Robert Eggers comedy, horror comedy.
He doesn't do much comedy, does he, in his films? So yeah, that would be quite interesting, I think. Yeah.
In fact, I don't think he does any at all.
No.
Oh dear. There we go. Anyway, we'll call that the end of the intermission, mercifully, and we'll head back to the main episode. Okay, so we're coming back with Jamie's choice. So, Jamie, would you please introduce your film, your choice for the best horror comedy?
My choice for best horror comedy is Evil Dead 2, 1987.
"4 years ago, in this quiet forest, in this cozy cabin, something happened. Something so frightening. Something so deadly. Something so evil. We prayed it would never happen again. Now, from the creator of Evil Dead, comes Evil Dead 2. Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
Directed by Sam Raimi, written by Sam Raimi and Scott Spiegel, starring Bruce Campbell as Ash Williams, Sarah Berry as Annie Noby, Dan Hicks as Jake, Cassie Wesley as Bobby Joe, Denise Bixler as Linda, and Ted Raimi as possessed Henrietta. Got to get old Ted Raimi in there. So, Jamie, could you give us the synopsis for Evil Dead 2?
Yes. Unlike Kev, I'll go for a very condensed, brief version here. Evil Dead 2 follows Ash Williams, a lone survivor battling demonic forces from the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, Book of the Dead, at a secluded cabin where he's tormented by possessed objects, his possessed girlfriend Linda, and eventually the professor's daughter Annie and others who arrive seeking the book, all while Ash fights for his sanity and survival as the ancient evil tries to fully manifest through him and open a portal to unleash pure evil, forcing Ash to fight his own possessed hand and eventually get flung through time to face the Deadites in medieval times.
Medieval times? I always think of the Cable Guy when anybody says medieval times. That's probably a deep cut there. Anyway, okay, so Jamie, what's your history with Evil Dead 2?
I definitely watched Evil Dead first. I remember just being absolutely blown away by that. I was certainly drawn more to the pure horror of Evil Dead. And I didn't watch the second one, sort of straight away, as you'd imagine I would. It was a few years later I watched it. Originally, I wasn't quite as taken by it, but that was just my immaturity, I think, as a consumer of film at that point. But I did like how the evolution of Ash as a character and how he was much more well, he's a bit pathetic in the first film, and then he becomes much more interesting as a character in the second film, that's for sure. But I didn't quite connect, I think, with some of the more sort of surrealist, absurdist elements of it until much later on when I watched it, when I was more aware, more mature, and I loved it then, and it's now surpassed the original really for me. It's a film that I love coming back to. It is such a sort of brisk 85 minutes that it just flies past. Yeah, it's.
Well, I think they both these films are very sort of brisk, aren't they? They're very straight and to the point. But Kev, what's your history with Evil Dead 2?
Well, because I'm old, I saw it at the cinema when it came out. So I'd seen Evil Dead obviously beforehand and absolutely adored that. And I did click with Evil Dead 2 pretty quickly, I think. I think there'd been talk about it being sillier than the first film. So I was kind of expecting it to be completely absurd, and it wasn't. It's just very, very funny with lots of real horror in it. So yeah, I connect to. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of Army of Darkness. I think Raimi gets the horror comedy balance bang on with Evil Dead 2. In the first film, it's very funny, but it's mainly horror. The third film, it's mainly comedy with a bit of muted horror. He gets that balance really, really well here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I first came across all three Evil Deads because my brother-in-law got the DVD box set when it came out. So that would have been around 2000. So I'd have been about 17, 18, I think, and watched all three in pretty quick succession, I think, really. So maybe obviously a lot different to your guys' experience. And I found it very similar to sort of Mad Max in, you know, the difference between Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, just in terms of, you know, sort of production and style, and that very much has that sort of disconnected sort of narrative. You know, one film doesn't necessarily bleed straight into the next one, and there's a lot of sort of differences there, and I think this just, yeah, I mean, it'd always been there as in the zeitgeist, or my experience of the zeitgeist, that Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead are absolute classics, and you know, there was no sort of denying that on my first watch. They're just something else, those two films.
Yeah, I agree with the comparison with Mad Max. You know, I was looking at sort of Mad Max. I was looking at Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Evil Dead. The first films, they were all sort of guerrilla style, independent films by young, very ambitious and talented crews and actors. And then the second film, it was essentially remaking the first one, but expanding it and making it so much more, and much more. I mean, Evil Dead 2 is, it's like a remake, really, isn't it? It's between a sequel and a remake. It does reference Evil Dead. They had to shoot some of the scenes to look like Evil Dead 1 because Raimi had sold the rights for Evil Dead 1, so they couldn't actually use that same material for Evil Dead 2. And for the first sort of 10 minutes of the film, it is sort of just reintroduce you back into the Book of the Dead world. But when it gets that over with, it is just absolute mayhem, visual brilliance for the next 70 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, less, 65 minutes. Something like this. It's just over 80. I think it's under 85 minutes for length, but it is just propulsive. It just there's one sort of it's about half an hour with the brilliant possessed hand sequence, extended sequence, which is broadly dialogue free. It's just Ash and some amazing physical performance acting. It's so Buster Keaton-esque, and Bruce Campbell did vast majority of that himself. He was in good shape. He got himself up with a body and was just working out and got his body to such strong shape that he was able to do all of that himself. He was just throwing himself. And that flip he does, that's all Bruce Campbell. The only thing he didn't do apparently was that fall down down the stairs. He got the stunt guy to do that, but everything else that was Bruce Camp, and one of the most physical, exhausting performances.
I'm always so impressed by it is that it's during that scene where he's fighting his hand, and the hand knocks him out, and then the hand drags it, it sort of claws and pulls his body. It's just amazing. It's so it's ingenious. Obviously, Raimi, big fan of the Three Stooges, and
yes,
this really sort of shines through here. I mean, even more so in Army of Darkness, but I don't think Campbell really sort of gets the props.
He doesn't. It's a tour de force of a performance. It really is, and you the same scene. It's just it's a bit like a sort of a silent film. Anyways, it's a surrealist, absurdist silent film. But he is able to capture your attention throughout, and it's the demands it placed on him as a performer. I mean, Raimi just really put one of his best friends through the ringer, and his younger brother. he got put through the ringer as well. I think Sam Raimi clearly had a bit of a love of almost masochist, or should I say sadistic pleasure in causing pain on his actors, because he certainly put them through the ringer.
I think Raimi has said that actually one of the reasons he wanted to do Evil Dead 2 the way he did was because he wanted to hurt Bruce. He wanted to really sort of because they were best mates, and he just thought, I'm just going to hurt my best mate. I'm going to make him do these absurd things. And then Campbell just came back with even more dangerous ideas. So they were just playing off each other. Really brilliant.
And the thing is, I think it really, the film and just the success of the film thematically depends so much on the Ash performance as well.
Yes,
and I think it is, it's that cigarette paper of being perfect, because if it goes too far and he's trying to be an action hero, then it just doesn't work. He's delivering lines. Even when we get to Army of Darkness, he's realizing that he's better than these people and he's got one up on them. But here, he's sort of, it doesn't go too far, and it doesn't, he's not just sort of going in and of himself and being, a scaredy cat kind of thing, but he's trying to sort of portray being a badass, but not quite getting it just right.
He has to be a slightly rubbish action hero.
Yes.
Despite all his best efforts, he's a bit rubbish at it, and he doesn't know that he's a bit rubbish at it, and that's why he's funny, because he's like, he's not Bruce Willis, he's not Sly Stallone or any of that. He's just Bruce Campbell, and he doesn't realise that he's not an action hero. He's just Ash, and he's just doing the best he can, really.
It's Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China.
Yes,
exactly. That's the level, isn't it? Yeah, and he just pulls it off impeccably, I think.
But it does have some pretty dark stuff as well. The self mutilation hand scene is tough, and there's elements of sort of madness and sort of potential schizophrenia perhaps within the character as well. I mean, it has some interesting ideas that are quite dark, but then the comedy is always there as well. I mean, the violence is amped up to Spinal Tap 11. It goes way beyond, and the gallons of blood just bursting through the walls. And the guy, what's his name? The guy with the horrible teeth.
Jake? No?
Can't remember his name. The one in the dungarees, the guy that gets
Jake,
could be Jake. It's Jake, yeah. When he gets pulled down under the trap door, and it's excessively gory to the point of being absurd.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love the the energy of that. It is funny and gory, violent at the same time, and it's. At one moment, you're stamping on a head, and then the next thing, an eyeball is flying through the frame into the mouth of a character. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's just magic.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to, we talked a lot about Rick Baker on American Werewolf in London, but Mark Shostrom.
Well, it's Greg Nicotero.
Yes, and Robert Kurtzman, obviously,
as
the guys behind
Walking Dead. And so I think Nicotero was a protege of Tom Savini, wasn't he?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
So he's excellent sort of mentor background, and I think his special effects work, the prosthetics and everything. It's for a which is still a low budget film, 3.5 million budget, I think.
You can see that all that money on the screen.
Absolutely,
in this film.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we've got so much different sort of effects work here as well. You get a bit of stop motion as well, which looks incredible. That
it does. It holds up, doesn't it?
The dancing headless corpse is just so. It feels like it's almost something out of Nightmare Before Christmas. It has that kind of feel to it. It just looks.
It really holds up.
Incredible. Those sort of effects work with Raimi's sort of stylistics and his sort of vision. Just they just meld so incredibly well.
It's just what he was doing with the camera was just it hadn't been seen before, and it's influenced so many directors. And I know
he's not afraid. He's not afraid to just sort of throw in a scene that's going to look cool, or throw in something that's going to look great. It's like the cross scene, that one particular shot where he stabs the cross into the ground, and then you get the lightning behind him. It's just, it's like just, yeah.
But he draws all sorts of influences. I saw sort of like there was German expressionism in there as well. There's this, and I said before, the surrealism. He does pull through all sorts of influences, but he does ultimately, I think, make it his own. He does have this signature, and so you see that in his horror comedies in particular. Drag Me to Hell was another good example that is signature Raimi, and going back to his what made him famous in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And the use of fog in this film, I always fucking love the fog in this film. It just looks so good. And you even get these scenes where it's obviously reversed and everything, where all the evil's going back in because the sun's come up. And it always mesmerizes me, the use of the fog in this one and the first one as well. I just wanted to point that out because I just love the fog. But it feels very sort of it's fog, but it feels very ferocious. It feels like it's there as an entity within the film and within the scenes, and these particular sort of shots in the early part of the film where Ash is sort of getting to grips with what's going on. You get this just bonkers shot where he's flown into the air through the trees, and I believe he was that Bruce Campbell was actually on some just spun him around.
It's like, sort of a gimbal thing,
yeah. But you get I can't forget the name of. There's a specific name for the style of. It's basically attaching the camera to a board of wood with two people running through the woods. It's got a name, shaky and it's just shaky cam. That's it.
Well, one of the shots he had his camera strapped to a motorbike, and he was flying. Oh, wow. It's just his camera work is just beyond kinetic, and I love it.
Yeah, and just again using that POV as a character, the representation of this force. You don't sort of believe that you're in the POV of a demon or anything like that. You feel that you're in the POV of a presence, of an evil, of just something that's not physical, and it takes you through that, through the eyes of that.
The tree attack scene, which obviously echoes the quite unpleasant tree rape in Evil Dead, a scene that Raimi has since regretted. He wished he hadn't done that, and they repeat it without the same viciousness. But it's still a tough scene to watch when the face, when it's in the face, and it's still pretty brutal, I think.
But again, for a film that is a sort of pseudo sequel remake type thing, it goes back to those things that we saw in the first one, but you don't for a second sort of think, oh, they're just doing the same thing. It's telling the story in a different way, and it's amazing that it gets away with it. I think it's just because any other film that's sort of doing that, you just think, oh, they're just doing the same thing. So let's talk a little bit more about the comedy. Where do you think the sort of comedy lies in this film? Is it just down to that absurdity of some of the set pieces, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely down to some of the I say it's there's violence and there's gore, but it is often done to a deliberate absurdist excess, so it becomes funny. It becomes ridiculous. And I use the eye scene. That's a good example of that. A lot of Bruce Campbell's performance. There's elements of humor in that as well, because it's so exaggerated, and it's the film just feels like a funhouse ride.
Yes,
you just go in, and you've got the things that are jumping out at you, and you're sort of reacting to it. But it's a thrill. It's fun. A lot of it's obviously very sort of tongue in cheek. The hand sequence is just brilliant, and the dismembered hand scuttling around and almost like a mouse almost, and then flipping the finger, and so it's all done. It's all done very tongue in cheek.
One of the best jokes in the film comes at the end of that sequence, where he traps it under the bin and puts a book to hold it down, and it's a farewell to arms.
Farewell to arms.
Which is so funny. He's really you don't expect it to be that subtle when he's being that sort of silly, and then suddenly this one lovely little sort of aha gag, which is fantastic.
And then it skitters away.
Yeah, I mean, it can, it goes hard on the gore, like you say as well. There's so much blood. I mean, I think this is probably the bloodiest film that I'd seen until I saw Brain Dead. I certainly felt it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty, it is pretty relentless, and we get, as we sort of circle towards the finale of this film, where everything just sort of ramps up, and where we sort of get this great sort of vis effects scene of this portal opening, which is just fantastic, really fantastic. And I mean, do you think this sort of, do you think it nails the ending compared to sort of other films of this ilk?
I like the ending. It's as if poor Ash hasn't been through enough. He gets put through this, and it feels like an appropriate sort of cliffhanger type ending. And I can only assume that it was made with them thinking, well, we can't make another one of these. Whereas Evil Dead, they had no idea it was going to become successful, and that Stephen King was going to get behind it and make it, a success. Whereas Evil Dead 2, you get a sense that we are remaking this.
Do another one.
We can do another one. So it's yeah.
I mean, do you think? So I mean, this was probably. I think Evil Dead was sort of an underground hit, wasn't it? Really, and I think
Yeah.
especially in this country, it became a you couldn't see it because it was a video nasty.
It was a video nasty, and so we had the Video Recordings Act.
So I think really then Evil Dead 2...
It was on VHS that
Evil Dead 2 then became the sort of the Evil Dead that probably a lot of people knew and saw first.
But Evil Dead 2 didn't make a huge amount of money.
No.
It became a cult sort of international cult film. Lots of European directors found out about it and loved it. Del Toro, other people sort of found it and said this is amazing, and it grew from then. But it was still an independent film. It was Dino De Laurentiis' group who financed it.
Because Raimi wasn't originally going to do it, was he?
He only really did it because his previous film just bombed completely.
Yeah.
And
his second film, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was more of a studio film.
Yeah.
And I think he was. I know that Stephen King really sort of got behind the first film, but I think he really encouraged Raimi to go back to it, and to do it and just do it better. And he just went, okay, we're going back to this, and we are just going to amp everything up to the max. And if you're going to do a sequel or remake, whatever you want to call this, that's what you have to do. You can't just rehash. You have to take it and expand it and do it better and bigger.
And I mean, it obviously spawned a sort of legacy. I mean, we didn't really sort of touch on it with American Werewolf, but obviously that got a sequel 13 years later, something like that, which is very
Can we just move on from this? Because let's not talk about that.
No, actually, this is about strengthening my argument. Carry on.
Obviously, Evil Dead. Evil Dead had much more of a legacy than American Werewolf in terms of sequels and remakes and everything else. And do you think any of them has sort of held up to Evil Dead 2? I think that's Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are the best films in the franchise, and I think it's that sort of cigarette paper probably between the two for a lot of people. But
I personally liked the 2013
Fede Alvarez one.
The Fede Alvarez one. I liked Fede Alvarez one. It was more akin, I think, probably to the first Evil Dead. And it's pretty brutal. And then the Evil Dead Rise, at least they tried to do something different with that film. I like parts of it. Wasn't wholly successful for me.
I think they got very close to the tone of Raimi, probably closer to something like Drag Me to Hell. I don't think Sam Raimi is one of those directors that can only do what Sam Raimi does, and have that sort of that glint in its eye that Raimi has. And we've got another one coming next year, I think. Evil Dead, I can't remember what it's called. It's got quite a bizarre title. Evil Dead Burns, I think, or something like that. July 24th next year it's coming out.
Okay.
Anyway, so we'll wait and see on that one. But yeah, I don't think it's one of those classic sort of franchises that's been tarnished. I don't think there's certainly not been some films that aren't as good as others, but they've got their moments. I don't think any of the films with the Evil Dead sort of moniker have been awful. Like many sort of the big horror movie franchises. It's certainly not an American Werewolf in Paris, for sure.
No.
Few things are, to be fair.
Which I must admit, I saw that when I was probably 13, 14, something like that, and remember quite enjoying it at that age. And I revisited, I thought...
Oh, so you saw that first before?
Yeah, I saw that before, yeah. But I mean, thankfully, it bears very little resemblance to the original, the proper film. But I remember quite enjoying it. But I mean, to a 13-year-old, it's about werewolves and everything else. So I would enjoy it. But I revisited it because it appears on most of the free sort of streaming sites. for good reason. And I got about 30 minutes into it, and I was like, yeah, no, this is quite rightly described as one of the worst sequels ever, and it is. But there we go. But I tell you what, Evil Dead does have
X-Files.
X-Files connection, yes.
I'm trying to think what that could be.
It's very easy.
Oh, it's Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell.
Yeah,
Bruce
of course,
Campbell.
Of course
Appeared in season 6's Terms of Endearment, playing a demon, no less, who wants to have a baby. He wants to have a normal baby that doesn't have horns and a tail, and has no luck. But yeah, a really great episode of the X-Files. I think Bruce Campbell's. I think he's been in this. He's been on the podcast before. He was a connection before on an episode. I can't remember what it was now. But anyway. Yes, Bruce Campbell, our X-Files connection for this episode. And that about sort of wraps us up, unless there's anything either of you would like to add to your arguments.
Only that Jamie has made me want to go and watch Evil Dead 2 now. I know I'm easily persuaded. People say this all the time, that I'm so easily persuaded, but he's spoken about it so eloquently that I really fancy. If I hadn't got to watch something else for another podcast tonight, I would go and watch that this evening. Yeah, definitely. So
thank you.
Well done. Congratulations on that. You've persuaded.
I must admit, it'd been a while since I'd watched Evil Dead 2, actually. And I was sort of saving it because my daughter's getting into a horror. And I thought Evil Dead 2 would be quite, because we watched Army of Darkness because I knew that would be pretty sort of safe and a sort of good sort of benchmark. But she doesn't want to watch Evil Dead 2 because she didn't like the silliness of Evil Dead 3. I'm like, so I've got to sort of work at,
Oh, just give her Evil Dead.
Yeah. That won't
no.
traumatise her in the slightest bit. That'll be fine. I did traumatise a friend after we'd been to see it walking home. I'd got a jacket, and she was really shaken by Evil Dead. And being a bit of a shit at the time, because I dangled my jacket over her head so it touched the top of her head. She screamed and took off. I've never seen anybody move so quickly. And she didn't speak to me for weeks and weeks after that. But I learned a lesson that, just because I wasn't traumatized by a horror film doesn't mean other people aren't.
Doesn't mean, no.
Don't do that to people.
Exactly. Well, that just leaves me to make a choice between the two then. And I'm sure it's not going to come as a surprise to Jamie in particular, because he knows that one of these films is one of my all-time favourite horror films ever. So I'm going to have to side with Kev on this one. An American Werewolf in London.
Oh, that surprised me. I thought you were going to go with Evil Dead 2. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, an absolutely fine selection, Evil Dead 2. I think, we'd sort of touched on Shaun of the Dead obviously being, I think that's up there in the conversation as well.
But of course there is an Evil Dead joke in that, isn't there? When he goes to see him he finds him in the shower, he says, "You come to the pub, why don't you join us?" Terrific. Really good.
Yeah, well, it has something we didn't touch on American Werewolf in London as well, but there's the mirror scare.
Yes,
that's in Shaun of the Dead as well.
Yeah.
It's
So Peter, if I go for Brain Dead, would that have been closer?
No.
No,
sorry, no. But I mean, again, that's another fine example of horror comedy.
There wouldn't be Brain Dead without Evil Dead 2.
Mm-hmm.
No, exactly.
That's very true.
Exactly. But no, I mean, what I would effectively call my sort of horror unholy trinity, The Exorcist, The Wicker Man, and American Werewolf in London. That's it's in my top 5 horrors, so it's got to be, I'm afraid.
I would just say though, if anybody hasn't seen either of these films, they're really both worth watching. I mean, they are amazing. Both of them are amazing films. You can't go wrong with either of them, to be honest.
I think Evil Dead 2 is the best Evil Dead film. It's one of the best horror films of the 80s as well. It's both fine choices, and I really enjoyed rewatching Evil Dead 2 because, like I say, I'd not watched it for a couple of years at least. which is a fair bit for me with classic horrors. But I hadn't visited American Werewolf in London for probably the same amount of time, to be honest, because I did debate whether showing that to my daughter, but then the Jenny shower scene sort of. I was asked. I mean, I could just.
I was asked many years ago, to suggest a film for a sort of like late noughts to early teens sort of little girl who wanted to get into horror films, and I did say, American Werewolf in London, and I went away and immediately phoned her mum back and said, hang on a minute, whoa, hang on, I've just remembered.
You flashed back to that viewing with your parents.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had to have a little lie down before I phoned her back, but it's the one thing that stops that from being a really good kids horror film, I think.
Yes, yeah, it is. Bloody hell. Bloody Jenny Agutter.
Oi, leave it, leave it.
Fine body.
You're on thin ice here, mate.
Well, there we go. I mean, gents, thank you so much for joining me on this. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. So, I mean, Kev, do you want to tell people where they can find you, find your work, and hear your legendary voice?
My legendary voice? Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, I didn't say legend at the start of this, so I've got to get it in.
Good. Don't call me a legend. It goes to my head, and I'm unbearable for days afterwards. You can hear me on Evolution of Horror, particularly on Hammer Time. That's the place I'm at the moment. You can find my reviews on EOFFTVreview.com, I think it is. I can't remember. But EOFFTV.com is my database. Just look for me on social media as EOFFTV, and you'll find me. I can't always guarantee that I know what I'm doing on social media, so come and befriend me and say hello. You might get an answer in about a year's time because I'm just not very good at it. So but there I am.
Excellent. Okay, Jamie, anything you've got coming up or anything to plug?
There's nothing really to plug. The existing podcasts that I've been on. So Filmbusters, Alien Effect, and obviously Movie Drill. Oh, and Movie Drone is another one as well.
And the So-Called X-Files podcast.
Oh, and the So-Called X-Files podcast.
Never heard of it. I don't know who would be on that. I've no idea. Yeah, sorry, I am on that as well. So you go find me. Yeah. Sorry, Peter, we've let you down there, mate.
Shall we just do that back?
Let's do that again. Yeah. And of course, the best of the lot.
Yeah. Make sure you're saying that when you're on Hammer Time as well.
I'll try and crowbar the X-Files in at some point. I've managed to do Doctor Who in most episodes. I'll try and get the X-Files in at some point, just for you, Peter, to make it up to you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Yes, well, that's it. That just leaves me to say goodbye. Jamie to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay, and for Kevin to say...
Beware the moon, lads. Beware the moon.